Well, hey there YouTube, it's Bobi, aka Paginator, and I am going to be baking bread today. Promised my dad that I would come and visit this next time, which I'm actually leaving tomorrow, that I would bring some bread. But not just any bread, his mom's bread that she can't make anymore due to her age and conditions and stuff. And this bread is also famous in the town where I'm from, especially at the university, Utah State University. She worked for them, let them use her bread recipe in their sweet shop for years and years. It's kind of a thing where I'm from. Anyway, I'm going to be baking some bread today, and I'm going to bring you along with me. And we're also going to talk about some books I've been reading recently. As I'm filming it, today is August 9th, and this video might actually come out a little while later. So know that whatever books I talk about as recently means in the last month-ish, according to this date. Anyway, let's go to the kitchen. Okay, so we're here in the kitchen. I have already started the yeast. Oh, the camera angle's a little bit wonky, sorry. This tripod's weird. Anyway, I started the yeast already. When you make bread, this is really important to put the yeast in with some lukewarm water and let it rise. I've let the yeast work and activate for about 7-8 minutes, and I'm gonna continue to let it do that while I start mixing up the bread. I think probably just to make things a little bit easier, I am going to tilt the camera down and face the counter so you can see just what I'm doing down here for the rest of this process. But I will be talking about books as I go and that kind of thing. And I guess we'll just get started. Okay, so here is the yeast. You can see that it is activated, and as I said, I'm going to set that aside for a little bit. I am going to be using my grandma's special bread recipe that I spoke about, and you can use the same process with any bread recipe that you have. It all works basically the same. So I'm going to be putting in hot water. It's really important that it's hot. Oil, honey, salt, and about 4 cups of flour. Then I'm going to be mixing that, and then when that's ready, I'll add the yeast. Okay, so here's a bit of a tip. I've got my hot water, and then I need oil, honey, salt, and flour. When you're using your measuring cup, I need a cup of oil and a cup of honey. If you do the oil first, then it'll get the measuring cup all slicked up and oily so that the honey won't stick inside of it, which is a really helpful thing. Okay, so my honey has solidified a little bit, but you can just pop it in the microwave. Honey never goes bad, which is awesome, because it's too expensive to just throw away when you don't use it enough in time. Okay, we're going to add some salt. Okay, so it's time for some flour. I have cleaned out my scoop so it's not sticky and oily anymore. And I think I'm just going to go with 2 cups of flour to start. If I was doing a full batch, I'd do 4, but I just want to do a half batch today. And even a half batch is not going to quite fit in this bowl once we've got everything mixed together. Okay, maybe that wasn't a good idea. It's so watery that little bits are flying everywhere. Let's add another cup of flour. Okay, that's better. So it's starting to thicken up a little bit. And now we're going to pour in our yeast mixture. And we just want to mix that on a low speed. Okay, for the next step in the process, we're going to keep adding flour. We want to get up to about 9 cups, I think, and I've got 3 in there. But I'm just going to do 1 cup at a time and then mix. It always works better that way. I do like to use the brand Montana flour. It's really, really soft and it's really good for baking. As far as books go, I think I want to start talking about the book that I'm currently reading. It's Places We've Never Been by Casey West. It is a contemporary romantic road trip story with two kids who used to be best friends, and then one moved away, so they kind of phased out, but their moms planned this road trip together for 3 weeks, and they're not really liking each other anymore, but the girl can't figure out why the boy isn't wanting to talk to her as much, and I don't know. It's probably going to turn out that they're going to fall in love because that's how Casey West books go. But so far it's been really cute and enjoyable. And where I'm at in the book right now, they're in Zion National Park, which is a place I've never been to, even though it's in Utah and I grew up in that state. Alright, so you might have been noticed that I put 2 cups of flour on top and kind of patted things down. This comes the part that I have to do some more mixing with my hands because my bowl isn't big enough. If I kept going with the mixer, it would just like kind of trudge through and get dough stuck in it and it wouldn't really get anything mixed. So we are going to turn this out and continue to mix. Don't worry, I do this every time I make bread. And I'm just going to work this with my hands to continue to get the rest of that flour mixed in. It is going to make a holy mess. I've got my apron on, my Raven Boys apron, and we're just going to mix. And I'm going to tell you about another book that I've read recently, which is My Imaginary Mary by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows, also known as the Lady Janies. You may have read other books in the series that they have co-written together. My Lady Jane, My Plain Jane, what's the third one? My Something Jane, Calamity Jane, and then we had the Mary series. So My Contrary Mary was the first one, and then My Imaginary Mary just came out a couple of days ago, according to when this is being filmed, and I have already read it. So on the release date, which was this past Tuesday, so like a week ago today, the King's English bookstore, which is a bookstore I talk about often, in Salt Lake City, hosted a free online event that you could join from anywhere. It was on Crowdcast, and they had the 3 authors there. They read a passage from the book and talked a bit about it, answered some questions, and it was really fun. One thing that's really exciting is that their first book, My Lady Jane, is being made into a series on Amazon Prime. And they've already done the casting for it, I believe. I haven't looked it up to see like who's been cast and stuff. I'm a little bit worried, as we all are when we hear a book we love is being adapted into TV or movie. It makes me a bit nervous. I do love those series so much. If you're not familiar with them, basically these 3 ladies take historical women and add magic and change history dramatically, usually for the better, and it's really fun. You can read them all as standalones, all of their books. They don't necessarily connect together, although My Plain Jane and My Contrary Mary do have a connection. Okay, I think we need a little bit more flour. So I'm definitely going to end up with more than 9 cups, but that's fine. You just need as much flour as what you need to get the consistency that you want. So this new one, My Imaginary Mary, this is about Mary Shelley and Ada Lovelace, both of whom were real historical women in England. Mary Shelley, of course, wrote Frankenstein, and she was the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft, who was a feminist writer in the 1800s, which is pretty freaking cool. She ended up meeting Percy Shelley, the poet, through her father's book printing business, and I think eventually they got married. Of course they did, because she changed her name to Shelley. Anyway, she eventually wrote Frankenstein, which is one of the greatest books ever written. It is absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest you do. Our other main character is Ada Lovelace, who in real life was the first computer programmer and a woman. She was also the daughter of Lord Byron, who, although a great poet, was not a great person. Some of these elements play out in the book, but we also have magic. We have something called the Fae, which are not fairies, but they're basically creatives who have magic in their creations. So Mary is one, and Ada is one, and they have a Fae godmother who teaches them together, and so these two girls become friends. In real life, we don't know if Mary Shelley and Ada Lovelace ever met. It is likely because Percy Shelley, Mary's husband, and Lord Byron were acquaintances and friends. So it is possible, but also Lord Byron didn't have much to do with his daughter, so, you know, it is what it is. Okay, this dough is ready to rise. I just love this. I love this feeling. And you know what, this is great if you're feeling mad or frustrated. Like, let's say I'm mad at a student named Billy Bob. I'd never had a student named Billy Bob, but we're gonna pretend, okay? So maybe Billy Bob told me to F off in class one day, and I got mad, so I can just go, take that, Billy Bob. It's fantastic. Ugh, it's good therapy. Or let's say one of your favorite authors does something horrible to a character, and you can be like, how dare you? It's awesome. Okay, I'm going to grab another bowl and a tea towel, and we'll get this going to rise. Alright, so this is my Rachel Ray dump bowl. I don't know why she calls it a dump bowl exactly, but we're dumping the dough into it. We are going to place this tea towel over top of it. It is from Madam Puddifoot's Tea and Cakes, which you may find when you next go to Hogsmeade. And we want that to rise for about 50 minutes. So we're going to let it do its work in the sunshine, and I'll be back with you in a little while. Okay, so it's been about 50 minutes, and this has risen. It needs to go for a second prove. So really what we want to do at this point is just punch it down a little bit, and it is still kind of sticky. So I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil and just put on my hands. That helps you not get as much dough stuck to your hands. We're just going to punch it down a little bit. Pop it out of the bowl. Come on. Oh, it wants to stick to the counter. Be nice. On this one, we don't need to do a ton of kneading as far as working it. I want to just get the air bubbles out. So not only am I reading the Casey West book, but I've also been listening to Skandar and the Unicorn Thief, which is a middle grade book, and it's been really fun. I think my students are going to really enjoy it. It's about a young man who wants to become a unicorn rider, and if you can pass certain exams and get certain things to work out for you, you have the chance to go to a place where the unicorns live and hatch a unicorn to be your companion. And I'm not really going to get into too much of the plot right now, but it is a pretty good one, so if that sounds intriguing to you at all, I would recommend it. Okay, this needs to go for a second proof, and so we're going to cover it again and, oops, air bubbles, come on. Go for another 45 to 50 minutes. Alright, we've got about 10-15 minutes still to go on the second proof of the bread, but we need to get our bread pans ready because we're going to be ready to put dough into that pretty soon. So my first step, I always spray this down. Actually, I want to switch to my other spray. So this is regular like olive oil spray, and this one is baking spray that has a bit of flour in it, which helps things to not stick. So we're going to spray these down first. I know this isn't smell-o-vision, but the spray smells really good. Alright, I did get a bit close on the sprays, which is going to leave some moisture, and that's okay for what we're going to do next. You could just go with the spray if you wanted to, but I always like to double hedge my bets when it comes to bread and not wanting it to stick in the pan. So I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of flour in each one of these small ones. I'm going to be making 3 mini loaves and 1 large loaf. We'll put a little bit in here. So you want to start and just take the pan and turn it this way and that, tapping gently so that the flour gets in all around. And then I'm going to tap out the excess into the big pan here. So I've got coverage on all sides and the bottom of the pan. I did accidentally hit this side with my fingernail, but it's a small enough space it'll probably be fine. I'm going to just try to tap some more flour over there anyway. And then we need to do the same thing with the big pan. Okay, we'll set these aside, and when the dough's done proving, these will be ready. Okay. The dough is done proving for the second time around, so we are going to knead it again and then cut it into portions and put it into the pans that we prepared. Alright, I got my hands a little oily, again with just olive oil, and I'm going to work on the dough. Don't want any air bubbles when this goes into the oven. So another book that I can tell you about that I read recently is Dark and Shallow Lies. And this is one that I got near the beginning of the summer. I got a bunch of books that were kind of dark and spooky. And this is one that, like, the atmosphere of it was so well done and so strong that it kind of has stayed with me a little bit. So Dark and Shallow Lies is about Gray, who has gone back to stay for the summer with her grandma in the town that she grew up in Louisiana. And this town is like the psychic capital of the world, or the South or something. Anyway, her grandma Honey has a store where people can buy like mystical things, and then she'll like set them up appointments with different psychics in town and things like that. And this town is kind of like a floating town. It's very swampy and it's right on the water. Gray's best friend Elora went missing several months ago, and this is the first time she's been able to come back since Elora went missing. And her friend Hart, who is another great friend growing up and like her lifelong crush, is there, but he's kind of like acting like he's pissed at her and just kind of mad at the world. There's a lot of mystery surrounding Elora's going missing. Another interesting thing about Gray and Elora and Hart is that they, along with some other kids, were all born within the same month of each other, and they kind of grown up together, and their destinies have all been kind of linked. Except for when they were small, two of them, a pair of twin girls, went missing and their dead bodies were found. And everyone else always expected the town weirdo. And he's been long gone, so when Alora's gone missing, they're like, okay, we can't blame it on the town weirdo. Who really killed Alora? Who took her? Is she even dead? Is she hiding somewhere? Did she run away? What's going on? And as secrets begin to unfold, more and more dark things started happening, and I can't really tell a whole lot more without like completely spoiling the plot, but I can tell you that the person who was behind it all was not what I thought it was going to be, or who I thought it was going to be, and yeah, it was just super creepy, and like I said, the atmosphere was super well done, and I've been thinking a lot about those characters since reading the book. Okay, so you'll notice that I'm squeezing a lot with my fingers. I'm feeling for air bubbles, and there's still a few in there, but we're getting most of them out. We're just going to work until we can't find any more air bubbles. This is another good therapy time if you've got someone you're mad at or whatever. You can take out your aggression on the dough. This is my favorite knife for cutting dough with. My parents brought it back for me from Alaska, and I put a little bit of olive oil on it just to help with the stickiness. We're just going to cut this in half. Okay. I think we can get away with using this whole chunk for the big loaf. Getting a little bit sticky again. With this recipe that I've used, you could also use this to make cinnamon bread if you wanted to roll it out really thin and do layers with like cinnamon butter and put like raisins or walnuts or, you know, something like that in there. I'm not going to do cinnamon bread. I usually only do that at the holidays. So I'm just going to try to loosely shape this into a rectangle, and then I'm going to roll like this, tuck under the ends, and plop. Okay, so I don't know how easy it'll be for you to tell, but the top of the dough doesn't come above the top of the pan, which is good because that gives it room to grow. Now that this one's in the pan, I'm going to go ahead and turn the oven on and let this maybe rise just a little bit while it's waiting for its turn to go into the oven, and we'll get these other three cut and put into their pans as well. So another book I can tell you about that I read recently was Camp by Elsie Rosen. This is a book set at a summer camp for LGBTQIAP+ kids. All the letters in the rainbow. That doesn't make sense, letters in the rainbow. Anyway, you know what I mean. Our main character is Randy, and he has been in love with this other camper, Hudson, for like ever. Hudson's always talking about like, you know what, we don't have to like demean ourselves because we're gay and other people might treat us badly. We can be better than that. We can do anything we want to. And Randy's been super inspired by him, as well as like super totally crushing on him and wanting to be boyfriends with him. But Hudson has this reputation of dating a guy for 2 weeks and then dumping him hardcore. So he also knows that Hudson only likes super masculine guys. Hudson's really masculine himself, and Randy is not. He's a little bit chubby. He's got long hair. He's very much into theater. He loves nail polish, and he knows that he's not the kind of guy that Hudson usually goes for. So what does Randy decide to do? Well, between last summer and this one where the book takes place, Randy kind of reinvents himself. He works out a whole lot. Oops, I almost knocked over my entire jug of olive oil. Thank goodness I saved that. Anyway, Randy works out a lot. He got super fit. He did more sports at school and things, and had his dad kind of help him learn tennis, and just trying to get to be what in his mind is like the person that Hudson would want to date. So we get to camp, and Randy goes to sign in, and immediately one of the counselors is like, Randy, what? That's not you. What the heck? And he goes, oh yeah, my name's Dell now, which is like the second half of his name, Randall, Dell. So he started going by this new name, and first night there, Hudson comes up to him and is like, hey, are you new? And he goes, oh, you could say that. And Hudson doesn't recognize that this is Randy that he's gone to camp with for ages, so he flirts big time, and the two start to hang out. But the whole time, Randy's like, I can't be in the theater group and be in the musical this year. I can't paint my nails. I can't do these things that I love to do because Hudson won't like me if I do. So it's a little bit frustrating and sad as a reader for you to watch Randy do those kind of things. Okay, quick pause here to show you the bits of dough here in these smaller loaves are going to be a little bit higher up just because of the nature of the amount of dough and the size of my pans that I have. It's okay. I like them to be a little bit lower in the pan like the big one is, but these little ones will be just fine. I've done this a jillion times. Okay, so while we're waiting for the oven to be ready, I'll just tell you a little bit more about this book. So, of course, you know that Hudson is going to find out about Randy's secret at some point. And Randy's going to have to figure out that a boy who only likes you when you change everything about yourself isn't worth it. The rest of the story I'll kind of leave for you to find out on your own with your reading experience. I did quite enjoy it. There were a couple of times where I was like, oh, don't do that. But it was mostly just like getting mad at Randy for not being himself. Like, if you want to wear nail polish, go wear nail polish. Like, you want to wear a pink sequin outfit, go wear a pink sequin outfit. Just, yeah. Anyway, it was a good book. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, that's all I have got to say about that one. So I'm going to get these popped into the oven, and when they come out, I'll be back with you because there's another important step we need to do when the loaves are done baking. Okay, so the bread is still baking, but my house is starting to smell amazing. If you haven't baked bread before and you try this, like, your house is gonna smell amazing. Like, I wish I could send the smell through to you. It's so good. Anyway, it'll be out in a little bit, and so I thought I'd take a minute to tell you about another book that I read recently, and that is The Girl in the Headlines. This is about a teenage girl who wakes up bloody and confused and is accused of murdering her family. And she knows that her parents have been killed. Her brother is listed in the news as missing. And everyone's saying it was the teenage daughter who did it. No. The only person that she can get to believe her is the desk guy at the hotel where she's woken up at. A hotel she's never been to before. She doesn't know what's going on. It's absolute bonkers. And I'm not even going to tell you what else happens in the story because it would ruin it for you. The writing was fun and engaging. I got through the book rather quickly. It's not like any high literary art, but like with this kind of book, it don't need it to be. But it was an enjoyable read, and it kept me guessing throughout, which is what you always want in that kind of story. So another good one for you to add to your TBR if that sounds interesting to you at all. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes till the bread's going to be done baking, and I am already salivating a little bit over the thought of having a nice, fresh piece of bread. Alright, our mini loaves are done. The big loaf needs just a little bit more time, so I want to get that, so I want to let that cook while I do this next step. So once your bread comes out of the oven, and this is something my grandma taught me, I'm just taking some olive oil on a pastry brush, and I'm just brushing it across the top of the loaf. My grandma was born in 1932 or 31, somewhere in there, in the early days of the Great Depression. And bread making was not only a beautiful tradition, but it was essential because there was very little to eat, but they were able to get flour, and they made bread. And of course, they didn't use olive oil. She always made hers with vegetable oil. I've kind of tweaked that for my own preferences, but I took a class in college on the Depression, and so I learned partly from my grandma's stories and partly from that class that, like, bread making was like such a thing during the Depression, and it not only fed your family, but it also was something that, like, because you could get flour, if you were lucky enough to be able to get it. Of course, some people didn't have anything, but those who could get flour could make great quantities of bread and then be able to share it with neighbors, etc. And I actually did a demonstration in that class on bread making, and my professor told me that if I made more bread for her, I could have straight A's for the rest of my college career. Unfortunately, that was my last semester before student teaching, so it was a useless talent at that point. But anyway, yeah, so our mini loaves are done, and our big loaf is soon to come out. It's got another couple of minutes. Actually, I have another story I can share with you about bread in the Depression. So my grandma has told me several times about how her mother would make, she would take the flour bags that they would buy and make undergarments for the kids in the family, especially the girls, because the flour bags that they would buy had roses on them. And so she would sew the undergarments in such a way that the rose would be on the bum. So grandma's told me many times about her flour bag underpants. It's just something you had to do during that time. They had this saying, I'm going to forget how it goes. Use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. Just because it was a Great Depression, they had to. They had to either use it or not have it. All right, the big loaf is out, and if you're not sure how to tell if your bread is done, one trick you can do is, and these are still really hot, so can I do this without burning my fingers? If you hit the bottom of your loaf and it's firm and steady, you can hear kind of the thump thump sound, then it should be done. I did check this one and it feels like it's done, it looks like it's done, so let's get a little bit more oil and we'll brush the top. While I'm doing that, I can tell you another story. This is not about my same grandma. My grandma Page is the one that makes this bread and had the rose underwear and stuff. But my grandma Jensen, she's my great grandma, so on the other side of the family, great grandma, she made bread all the time as well. And she not when I was a kid, because she was old enough that she didn't make it anymore, but when her kids were growing up, she would make 4 loaves of bread a day, or was it 6? Anyway, she went through a lot of bread. She had growing kids, she had a husband and farm workers that worked all day and needed to be fed, so they went through a lot of bread. When I was a kid, like I said, I was a great grandkid, and she used to make us a treat. It's like the most unhealthy thing, but it was delicious. It was called a bread, butter, and sugar sandwich. All it was, bread with butter and sugar on it. It was freaking delicious. So good. Bread is just like, everything about bread reminds me of family, and especially the strong women in my family. It's a very uplifting experience. All right, so basically now we just have to wait until the bread is cool enough to cut. A lot of times I'm not patient enough to wait, so usually one of my mini loaves will get completely mangled because I'll have to cut into it straight away. This big one's going to be saved for my dad, and maybe one of the mini ones too, and I'm going to take another one of the mini ones over to my neighbor and see if they will help me with a chore while I'm gone the rest of this week. And that's about all I can tell you about baking bread. There were a couple of other books that I've read recently that I didn't get to, but you know, we're out of time, and you guys don't want to stand here and stare at loaves of bread that you're not able to eat while I talk about more books. So I'm just going to wrap this up and head back to the office. Alright, so I hope you had fun baking with me and hearing about what I've been reading recently, and I hope you guys are doing great. Have a wonderful, magical, and bookish day. Happy reading. Adios.